if we can start with a pretty big question, which is what it is exactly you do. And I'm also really interested in how you arrived at where you are today doing this type of work.
Sure. Yes. So what I do is I help people learn how to calm down that fight or flight nervous system. So if we think about if we're in a burning building or we're running for our life, our body goes into a fight or flight mode. There's a lot of physiological changes in our body that occur, such as your muscles tighten up, your cortisol levels increase, you have adrenaline. There's different things that put us on high alert. And so I help people change out of that, because those examples I just gave are extreme forms, but we actually put ourselves into fight or flight mode with all of the daily stressors in our life. And so I help people learn how to control that and change that to help them get rid of chronic pain or even acute pain, even if they have an injury, stress, anxiety, get out of major surgeries, get off medications, help sleep, all those types of things. So that's basically what I do. And we use body repositioning and breath work. And it's the unique combination of those two where people truly feel a significant transformation or shift in their existence.
Fight or flight, as you say, it's something we do in the everyday. Mm-hmm. You know, it obviously stems from back when we were cave people.
Yes.
But we've carried that into modern day life, and it doesn't necessarily serve us very well in certain situations. Do you think, I mean, obviously individuals have their own conditioning, their own traumas, things that have happened to them when they're young that can shape all this stuff. But do you think there's also an element of fight or flight or anxiety that's possibly in your DNA through family lines? And if there is, do you think that's something that can be changed if you're kind of built that way?
Yeah, so I believe all of that. So we have like a reptilian brain and a mammalian brain within us. So there are certain instincts that are designed for survival and safety. And those are built into our brain system. But there's also our genetics are set up a certain way. There's a gentleman, Dr. Madhi Brown, who I actually interviewed at one point to learn about this and how our genetics are tied into whether or not our fight or flight system is heightened or we have the ability to control it. So if we think about all of our daily stressors, if we have work, finances, kids, parents, relationships, how we drive, anything like that can be considered a stressor. We can approach it that way, or we can approach it as, okay, these things are happening in our world, but it doesn't need to heighten us and put us on an alert system. And we're built differently, and we subconsciously learn how to respond to different stressors in our life based on our parents who also learned it from their parents. And so you have this genetics that's built in, but you can actually change it too. And the first step of that is becoming aware of when a glass falls and breaks and shatters on the ground. How heightened do you get in your emotions to that? Do you look at it and say, oof, okay, that broke. Okay, what did I learn from it? Or do you freak out and do you say, oh my gosh, and you generate emotion around that? And so now when you have an emotion with an experience, that's actually going to get stored into your body. Now you have a further body response tied to the glass breaking, and you're going to be at a heightened state, even more so. So we can control that and we can learn, but we have to be aware of this process happening. And then there's some other tools that I teach related to your body position and breath work that also helps you as well.
I guess there's a muscle memory or a memory in your body around particular instance, and then you go into that kind of subconsciously. You suggest or believe the key is around awareness, essentially, and then further things you can do around breath. So often I do little challenges, and then I see what themes come up, and I share that with the listeners. Coincidentally, last week's challenge was about breathing. Just devoting a small part of the day to breath work just for the week reminded me how important it is.
Yeah, and it's great that you did that because that's also part of awareness. And I'll challenge you this week to see how many times can you catch yourself sucking your gut up and in and holding your breath. So it's kind of a reverse challenge. I want you to see how many times that you take your belly button and suck it up and in, and instead try to get yourself to relax it out as you exhale. So often we don't realize that we put ourselves into fight or flight mode, and that actually serves as your baseline. So if your body state is put into fight or flight state, then everything you perceive mentally and emotionally is going to put you on a higher alert. It's going to cause more cortisol to be stimulated in your bloodstream. And so part of that is when you suck your gut up and in, you put yourself in fight or flight state. So if you want to learn how to calm yourself down more, one, you have to be aware, how much are you sucking your belly button in? How much are you holding your breath? And I would challenge you to check yourself every 15 minutes, every half hour, and see if your gut went back to being sucked up and in. You'll be surprised how often that happens. And that starts to get into your brain. Okay, I'm putting myself in fight or flight mode again. Oop, now it's again. Oop, and again. And so you can start to really work on letting your belly button relax so your ribs drop down, your back relaxes, it calms you.
That's very cool. I'm definitely going to try that. I like the idea of the reverse challenge. So it's literally like a trigger, the belly button sucking in. It's a trigger that can put you into that state, the physicality of it.
It is. And it's a trigger in two ways, because as soon as you suck your gut up and in, and you can feel it, your rib cage lifts up in front and you start to hinge off of your back. That's going to cause your back muscles to contract, which crunches on the fight or flight nervous system in your back, and it's going to heighten you. The other thing is when you suck your gut up and in, now you've lifted your diaphragm. So your diaphragm isn't going to be as powerful in terms of when you inhale. And when that happens, you have to lift up your ribs to breathe instead of using your diaphragm. And then you don't stimulate the vagus nerve, which is what we know calms us down.
And so that runs down through the sides of the neck, the vagus nerve.
So the vagus nerve goes down from your brainstem down into your trunk, and it goes through some of your organs, around your organs and through your diaphragm. And so it helps control your heart rate, your blood pressure. It does a lot for your organs to allow them to work.
There's no doubt in my mind that stress manifests physically often. And I know as a male, I store a lot of tension in my belly, and I've done martial arts and things, and I've learned a little bit about the Japanese philosophy of the hara, which is the energy center in the belly. And I'm speaking from a male perspective. It might be the same for females too, but I know a lot of energy or stress can be stored there. So I think focusing on, as you say, this reverse technique and relaxing that and the effect that has on the rest of the body could be really helpful, or for anyone out there who might be experiencing a similar thing.
Actually, and what you say is very accurate. It's actually for women as well. So right below the breastbone. So if you follow your breastbone down to the very tip of the bottom, it's the same place where your ribs come up from the sides and kind of merge together. That area is where we store a lot of trauma. And so what happens is we guard ourselves there. And I know with men, you guys tend to lift up your rib cage and kind of create a structure right there, for strength and stability. But what happens is that area right at the base of your breastbone, it starts to store emotions and trauma. And it can be very hard for people to relax when they've stored trauma there. And so learning how to release that and let the belly button fall out, you feel your rib cage drop down and you have a calm that comes over you. And it's really powerful. But the more we try to suck it up and in and guard in that area there, the more we're creating this protective shell that's actually quite damaging to our health. And the other part of it is it takes away from your creativity, your imagination, your ability to analyze and actually produce in your job or your business or whatever you want to, work on in life.
I think when something's very important to you, you can also place, because you care so much about it, you can develop some of that anxiety. And then whenever you step into that environment, you're in this fight or flight mode, but it's actually because you care deeply about it and you're putting you're putting so much emphasis on it, but actually there's just so much to relaxation in whatever you do, I think.
Yeah.
Very different to being very focused and switched on, but having, being relaxed is such a key to so many different fields. And yes. maintaining a state of relaxation as whatever pressure it may be comes around you. So any skills to be able to be conscious of that, I think, are really valuable.
Yes, and you're exactly right. So a couple points on that. If we think about most animals, big animals, cats, dogs, lions, whatever, they spend their day curled up and in a relaxation mode. And then when they need to perform, whether it's to fight or to eat or, catch prey or whatever, they get up. So they spend a lot of their time in this rest relaxation mode and then save their energy for when they need it. And we can take a lesson from that as humans, because if we can spend our day in this relaxation mode where we have our brain still working and we can still be able to perform, but we don't have to have it in a high alert stress mode for our daily activities until, for instance, maybe you go play basketball or you go for a run. You can start to ramp yourself up so you get a little bit more alert, a little bit more heightened, but you don't have to go to an extreme unless you need to sprint. Maybe you're performing, things are heightened. You can calm yourself down so you have this calm presence that is still energetic, but you're not overdoing it and expending energy where you then have to crash. So you can tamper it, and you can use this as a skill or a tool to really shift you, and you conserve energy, and then you can perform at a nicer level, but still have the ability to ramp up even more if you need to.
What are your thoughts on medications and pharmaceutical stuff around anxiety treatment?
So unfortunately, there are some cases where people need something just to be able to exist and to get through their daily life. I don't like medications, but I understand the purpose, and I understand there are times when people are in crisis and they need something just to truly get to the next minute. At the same time, if a person is going through some medication like that, I say, okay, we need to look at changing your internal wiring. There are obviously some changes in the brain chemistry that has led to that state, but there are also changes in the body that have led to that state as well. So just recently, I was working with someone who was pretty much on edge, had talked about, doing something to himself to end his life. And, he said it wasn't serious, but he was in a state where he couldn't get beyond just that thought. And everything about him was just turned on. And so what we did, we had to work on his physical state first, because that sets the baseline. And we could get the physical state to calm down. Then his body can feel that sense of relief. When you feel something good and that sense of relief and that you could have control over it, then your brain chemistry starts to change. Now, if your brain chemistry starts to change and you feel gratitude towards relief, then you're now in a new type of energy for your brain chemicals. They start shifting. And then we start addressing the areas of those stressors that have led to the anxiety, and we try to find relief in those as well. If it's a person in your life, okay, what can we do? Can we take you away from that person so that way those chemicals that were generated based on your interactions with that person are no longer being generated? But it all starts with your body and finding some type of relief and then trying to build on that. And then you can start to wean off medications if you happen to have to use medications just to get you out of that crisis.
From my personal experiences, I found a huge benefit in, as you say, bringing the physicality into it. Sitting, as important as sitting with a counselor or someone is, just to take an objective look at things. I found the most benefit was when I got into it as a whole, and that's, as you say, the physicality of it, not just the over intellectual analysis of it all. I mean, that's important in some areas, but yeah, I think there's great from the work that you're doing. That sounds like there's real benefit from this bringing the whole body into it and finding those parts, as you say, that can be adjusted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you think about it, with all the different types of trauma therapy out there, there's so many different approaches. And a lot of those approaches are looking at, okay, how do you talk to yourself? How do we change the brain? How do we clear your mind? And sometimes when you're in that super anxious mode or you're in a panic attack, you can't feel anything good based on what you're generating by your thoughts and beliefs. So we have to turn to something, okay, how can we get you to feel good? So if we can turn to your body, which is where we store emotions, if we can get the body to feel something good that you generate yourself, not anyone else does to you, but you generate yourself, then all of a sudden that's going to help change your mind a little bit. I don't know if it would completely override it, but it gives you that alternative perspective that something can feel good again. And that it's like a switch that flips, because now all of a sudden your reality of everything is horrible. Now all of a sudden it's altered and you found something that feels good. And if you can generate it yourself, that's so much more empowering, because then you know you can do it again. And now your reality has changed.
It has a real knock-on effect from the knowing that you've done it yourself.
Yeah. And it's fun too. So as we're going through the process, people feel a change, and most of the time they're shocked because usually when I work with people, they're very skeptical at first. And they said, okay, this is not going to really work. And for instance, that person I was talking about earlier is like, this is not going to work. I just want to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, let's try this. Let's get you to feel something different. And by the time that they're done, they feel this transformation. You can see it. You can see that maybe their wrinkles are less, their face glows. You can just see this transformation in the person, because the relief that they felt decreases their stress, decreases their anxiety, and decreases their pain. And so now they can approach the world differently. They can interact with people differently. Their vibration is higher, their energy level is higher, because they just felt that relief. And so many people have so much pain, but they don't know how to get out of it, whether it's a mental pain or a physical pain. They don't know how to get out of it. And a lot of times they just need to meet the right person to teach them how to change their internal wiring to get them out of it, so that they have complete control over it, no matter what situation pops up. Because we know we're going to have stressors the rest of our life. We just are going to, because we live with each other and it's going to happen. But if we can learn to control it, gosh, all the power to us. And it really helps us out and makes the world better.
Dealing with the obstacles that are guaranteed to come. So how important is diet to you in all of this?
Yeah, that's also really important, because your diet affects your gut and your microbiome. So the bacteria and fungus and all those things that live in your gut that help absorb nutrients from your food, that is affected by your diet. And also we secrete happy hormones. So serotonin and dopamine, we secrete that also in our gut, not just in our brain. And so that's going to affect our stress and anxiety and how we perceive an experience in our world. So things like sugar, yes, we want to try to minimize those. For some people, for quite a few people, dairy can set off an inflammatory reaction. Some people gluten. Now, everyone's genetics is different. So for me, animal products set me off and inflame me. For other people, it doesn't. So when we look at diet, there's a lot of experimenting that people can do to see what really suits their body. There are some triggers like sugar. We just want to stop altogether. For the majority of people, dairy products, we want to stop. But there are a few cases where people don't feel a change with dairy products. So there's a lot of discovery into it. And so sometimes I'll do like a very clean diet and then cut everything out that I know that I could be sensitive to and see how I do. And then I'll introduce something back in and see if that works for me or not. But one thing that Dr. Will Bulchowicz, he wrote the book Fiber Fueled. He's excellent at and proposing is eating at least 30 different fruits, vegetables, or plants in a week. And that could be herbs and spices as well, fruits, vegetables, some grains, stuff like that. And what that does is it helps set up a lot of nutrition for your gut microbiome. And if we can get ourselves eating in that manner, it calms us down because we feel more satiated, but it helps our gut microbiome absorb nutrients so we feel better and also secrete the right hormones for our well-being.
It's interesting you say that. I've been experimenting a bit with my own diet at the moment. And one of the challenges actually on the show was around gluten-free. And I didn't have a great deal of knowledge about it, but I'm living in Germany, which is the land of bread.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't realize that I'm quite certain it had been having an impact. There's a lot of wheat beer and there's a lot of wheat. Right? Yeah. And even after just a week of this challenge, I felt a whole lot better. But as you said before, our individuality, our DNA is so different. It's so hard to pinpoint this dietary stuff.
It really is. And the other thing is too, a lot of times we eat a lot of processed foods. And when we eat processed foods that have chemicals in it, we get used to chemicals. And so our body is constantly fighting those. But then when we introduce something into our diet that's new, we may not really be able to tell if there is a bad effect from it. And so one of the things of going with really clean eating, of eating just fruits and vegetables, organic, typically, at least here in the United States, because there's so many chemicals. So if you go for a couple of weeks of eating just fruits and vegetables and all organic stuff, and then you start introducing some of your old foods in, you'll see the effects. You'll feel the effects of the chemicals from all the processed foods. And it's actually quite scary, because I grew up on a all processed foods diet. I mean, I drank 6-pack of Mountain Dews a day. I drank, 8 honey buns and different just frozen meals at night. And then I was sick. And then in my early 20s, I started shifting, and I didn't realize how bad I felt before and how good I could possibly feel. And then once I shifted my diet and occasionally I ate something that was processed or something from my past, I felt so bad. I realized how numb I was to the effect of all those chemicals. So sometimes even something simple is just eating organic stuff from the ground for a while. And even if you do grass-fed meats or whatever, something like that, you'll see the effect. And then you can make that choice. What do I want to feel like? What do I want to put in my body to generate a response or to determine my health?
So all this stuff, I mean, you've been applying to yourself, and I read that you've done some marathons and things. So you've obviously found your own research and practice beneficial to the things that you challenge yourself with.
Absolutely. So, when I was running marathons, I'm still running marathons. I've done over 40 and I've done 10 ultras. And so I did a couple challenges. So one year I was switching to plant-based. I wanted to see if I could run 6 marathons in 6 days in 6 different states, all on a plant-based diet, because there is this idea that if you're being very athletic or doing something endurance wise, that you need meat to get you through the day because you need the protein from meat. And I realized when I did that challenge, nope, I didn't need it. And then in 2017, I decided to do a true endurance challenge. And part of it was to see, well, I already knew the plant-based diet worked, but then I wanted to see how much could I calm down my nervous system and push myself in a very extreme athletic performance. So I ran a fast marathon to requalify for the Boston Marathon. 6 days later, I ran a 100-mile trail race up and down the mountains. I forget how many thousands of feet of elevation gain, but I did that 6 days later, pain-free. Then a month later after that, I ran a 100K race in the mountains, very steep, horrible weather conditions. A week after that, I ran a road marathon, so 26.2 miles. And then a week after that, I ran a 50-mile race in the mountains again, all no pain.
Wow.
And so it was kind of crazy, but each time I was working on calming my nervous system down so that I could stay in neutral and not have pain.
That didn't allow for a lot of recovery time either.
That's why it's all about the fight or flight nervous system. If you can calm that down so the muscles that contract without your awareness in an abnormal way, they learn to release, your body gets back into neutral, and you can do the next thing. And that's truly what I do. It's what I teach people is we just need to learn to calm down our stressors so the muscles release, so the joints go back into their normal position, muscles work correctly, pain goes away.
And then you're running at optimum, and you're giving yourself more horsepower in a way.
Absolutely. And this is why even people who've had a ACL tear, I worked with a naturopath, he had an ACL tear, MCL tear. He didn't want to have surgery. We calmed him down. The muscles went back to normal position. He allowed for scar tissue to heal in the certain areas that were torn. Didn't have surgeries, back to playing tennis 6-8 weeks later. So it's all about the nervous system and that fight or flight mode. It really is.
It's a very interesting time for all this stuff.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's a lot of potential. And that's one of the reasons why I'm grateful to talk to someone like you who is interested in this, and you have a following, because we can start to shift the way people think. If we realize that we have more power within us, and I'm talking actually physiologically and changing our internal wiring, and we can feel better that quickly, why not share this? Dr. Joe Dispenza is a great person, speaker, scientist, researcher, and he shares so much about how our thoughts and our beliefs influence our current state of our body and the neurochemistry in our brain. And I love following him, and I talk about him to whoever I can, because I'm trying to bring awareness to people that we have much more power. And I see it in the work that I do, so I try to share that as well. And it's fun. It's so much fun to see someone become happier, to see someone just feel relief, to have more control over their bodies. And just think, that person that was transformed, guess what? Anyone they interact with on their day now is going to feel a different energy, because that reaction is more positive. And it just continues to spiral, and you get this nice wave of positive interactions. And I'm not a person that says, okay, I need to be happy all the time. I realize that there's sadness, there's going to be negativity, but I also want to try to promote people feeling better, because I know that helps the whole community.
It's just so true that our thoughts guide us, and how we're feeling guides us. And, you know, if you trip over and you focus on the tripping over, and then another thing happens, and then it just spirals. I think to remain, you know, gratitude and optimism, and know that these obstacles are going to come, and just, as you say, generate that vibrational positivity from within yourself, and then be able to spread that to others is there's a lot of potential in that. Where can people find you, and what's the best way for people to find more about your work?
Sure. On a lot of social media platforms, I'm known as Dr. Amy Novotny, so they can search my name. But one place that you can find me is my website. It's paberinstitute.com, PABRinstitute.com. And that stands for Pain Awareness Breathing Relief. And I also do free 15-minute consultations. If people want to email me, send an email, amy@paberinstitute.com. And I like to get to know people. So if they have a question or concern, they want to share their story, feel free to email me, and we can also set up a consultation through Zoom and see if I can help them, whether it's free resources or working together one-on-one. One of them, we can look at doing that and, you know, help them transform and just learn even a new way of thinking about their life and their body.
And you have a book as well, or a couple of books? Or
So I co-authored a couple books, Success Habits of Superachievers and Don't Quit, Stories of Perseverance, Faith, and Courage. And so those ones talk about my story of how I went from as a doctor of physical therapy and doing traditional physical therapy work into this different world of the nervous system and helping people virtually all over the world calm their nervous systems, get out of fight or flight mode, get out of surgeries, get out of pain. So those books, they have different twists to them, but yes, those are out there as well.
One, I could honestly talk to you for for more hours, but no, it's been awesome to have your insight, and it's amazing work that you're doing, and looking forward to staying connected and seeing what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you having me on, Danielle, and thank you so much. This has been a great conversation.
My pleasure.